Today we're checking out one of the most classic radio control chassis that is out there today. Tamiya has been making this thing in one form or another since 1973. I've got a bunch of them, and I noticed a bunch of different variations on the theme. So let's check out these cars, dig into them a little bit, check out some of the upgrades. Now you can see inside this thing, we've got a little bit of some upgrades. Obviously the Super Swampers on bead locks, they don't come with that. Work in here, aluminum knuckles and uprights. I took the servo mounts, glued and bolted them right to the top of those uprights, so I essentially could give it a lift kit and put some nice 100mm shocks on it to make sure and clear these big gnarly meats. I believe the guy that drove this was Ivan Stewart. As you can see in here, I have done an MB Racing chassis upgrade kit. This is a Yeah Racing aluminum drive shaft. That's a Castle Sidewinder version 3. That's an Arma servo. And when you do the MB Racing kit, I believe he's got battery hold downs now, but I just went ahead with the carbon fiber thing because I love the side impact capability of that. But like I said, when you do that kit, it flips your servo up so that you can get extra steering out of it. Got an aluminum tube to stiffen both of the shock towers from impacting inwards when you land. That was a problem. Got an HPI radio, a little waterproof kit. This thing is actually genuinely waterproof. I've had it in the water a few times. The bead locks will pick up and soak water up into the sponges and then rot, so you gotta take them all apart afterwards. This motor is a 3000 kV Black Magic. I got it for 19 bucks off of eBay. They make what they call a Skyline Gear set, which is a 68 tooth spur gear, and then you can adjust the pinion to whatever you like, out to I think a 21 tooth on these. Obviously an aluminum motor mount is to be found somewhere. One of the significant factors in this chassis kit is your arms and the placement of them. If you notice right here how short these arms are and where your shock mounts are, and you can see how there's a double shock mount hold there and a single there. If you notice, the arms go way back on this one. This has a wider knuckle and bigger bearing on the inside of the knuckle. I believe this indicates this one may be a TA01 because of the length of the wheelbase. And if you look at where the shocks are, you've got a double mount there, just like this other truck. But the arms are very similar to the ones you get on that one. They just happen to be reversed. So that reverses the direction and shortens the wheelbase. What's weird is in this kit for the 037 here, you're gonna get two sets of arms for the front. They give you these and tell you to use them, and then the other ones they give you are these. I'm not sure why. They do have an in-house carbon fiber or FRP fiber reinforced plastic kit. I believe this is actual genuine carbon fiber. If there is a difference, I'm no expert. I love these aluminum diff covers, and I need to get the one for the back. I'd like to go aluminum on everything on all these cars. The weak point of these chassis seems to be the gearboxes. They still sell them here and there. They still sell the gears to go in them, but they will break out on the mounts. You can see this one. I just ran this accidentally into my fire pit this morning and kind of macked that front bumper mounting. So essentially the differences in these things is where they mount the arms and which arms they give you. And currently this is the only kit in production, the 037 kit, but they will sell you on eBay. Somebody's got this Pepsi body They've also got this Ford F-150 body. And you can see this one here stands up really a lot taller. These are not beadlocks. These are HPI rims and tires. These are 1.9 beadlocks aluminum, and with some just generic all-terrain tires. This thing shreds. I've got a 16-turn Tamiya motor in it. As long as you gear things properly, those motor controls will actually last a little while for you till you can get into something hotter and heavier. As you can see, I've got one over here. There's his capacitors down there. As long as you're keeping a nice short connection to the battery and using a big enough wire, these things seem to handle it okay. I have noticed a little bit increase in heat, so I stole a heat sink from a Tekin motor control. I like to stock the button head and the beveled head. These are grade 10.9 steel screws, and they're Allen heads. It's a lot tougher than a Phillips. Phillips are just kind of crappy all around. So that's what we have so far on those. Sometimes when you're trying to do the body mounts and suspension mounts on one of these TA02 chassis, as you can see here, what I've had to do to get the suspension to just kind of act right and get a good stance, and to get the body up high enough to where it wasn't going to affect anything, you sometimes have to buy different body mounts. I went right through the top shock hole on this body mount. Over here, I'm still using the plastic shock towers, but I bought a set of TA03 body mounts. With Tamiya, a lot of times you're going to have to mix and match parts because they're really dodgy on creating stuff. I got carbon fiber shock towers front and rear on this one, and just the regulars on this one. But watch your body mountings, and a lot of the ones that you'll find that are marked for this kit will be way too short or weird for certain body styles. So I found the TA03 body mounts really kind of work a lot better. Back here in the back, they make you build what they call a ball differential. Very cool kit. Every once in a while you can still find them available. Up front, it's a gear differential. At some point, what I'd like to do is try and glue the internals of a gear differential together. I think specifically for this car, I'm going to try it. Gluing them together would essentially lock the two axles and tires together. I want to move that to the rear and put the ball diff up front more. These tires are actually really slick, believe it or not, for my track. It's very sandy out there, so this thing kind of wallows around a little bit, and I think locking up the rear would give me obviously a bunch more oversteer, but I think it can handle it, have an extra in the front too. So I totally suggest that you buy one from a kit and build it, just to tell Tamiya how popular they still are. Beating on them doesn't work. These are not anywhere close to the kind of chassis that you're going to get from like a Traxxas or an Axial. They're not true bashers. This is a radio control model, and you can kill this thing in just a few short steps. But if you take care of it and really get good at your hand-eye coordination and driving response times, these things will just drift around. Anytime you buy a Tamiya as a kit, they're Japanese in origins, they're pretty thorough. As you can see, they're going to go through and give you all kinds of instructions. They'll give it to you in a couple different languages. And more importantly, you get all of the individual sizes right over here. You can actually take the part and put it on its picture to match up where it goes exactly. These are important to keep because as you're going through the rebuild process, sometimes in these ball differentials, these little rings will actually break. These are spring washers. But they tell you where everything goes. They give you all of the measurements and tell you what you're looking for in a couple different languages. And they'll give you all the special markings and stuff. These kits don't come with paint and a few other things, some of your electronics and stuff like that. Some of their kits will come with electronics, but they're going to tell you and show you basically everything that you need to know to get this thing built and running and tuned in. Definitely, and the chassis, because they're kind of a universal assembly procedure, even though this Ford F-150 is very old, I can still use it for that little brand new 037 chassis. Definitely hang on to your manuals. Tamiya is really good about giving you all that information. I haven't bought another brand as a kit, so I don't really know how good their manuals are. I'd like to think after about 5 of these, I've had plenty of time to get the gears and the best powertrains figured out. Motor control wise, I really like LRP stuff, but I will use one of these until it burns up. They gave it to me for free with the kit. Why not? I had 10 bucks worth of capacitors. It does just fine. Good connections. My AM radios don't like the interference from this stuff, so I wrap this in aluminum foil. It's Reynolds heavy duty if it matters to you. Found a nice little heat sink. This thing doesn't have problems because it's a Tekin Redline 17.5 turn motor. That seems to be a really good combination, but the gearing's a little bit low. I'd like to take and put the Skyline Gear set in it and bump it up from a 19 to a 21 tooth pinion. This seems to be about the maximum that you want to run. I believe that the 16 turn Tamiya motors are probably the fastest thing you can run in one of these chassis before you start blowing the shocks off of the shock towers and blowing the differentials off of the chassis, whether you got the plastic or whether you got the aluminum. This particular setup where you like a Castle and a cheap brushless motor, it can be waterproof, but it's way overpowered. So if you start snagging things, the ball differential will actually cause you a lot of problems. I've had to move to gear differentials in both ends of this truck so that any kind of movement up or down to get it at an angle and one tire unlocks so that it doesn't blow the axles apart or rip things to pieces more than it already does, because it really does put a lot of shock load into these pinions. You can strip them out because there's a pinion at each end of the differential here. It's a very good sealed up kit. When you run this in water though, you'll notice that your motor will get water and mud that sits right down in here when it all settles, and you got to spin that back out of there or take the motor apart and blow it out. So these things are generally pretty solid for running on dirt. I do not suggest any kind of big jumps because you're going to blow these diffs right off. There's no other solution out there for them. If you've got a Dremel, you can take and Dremel out some of the ridges that they've got to make this a round battery. They're made for stick batteries, but you can see I use LiPos. This thing warns you against using LiPos because of their power levels. It doesn't like anything up in the 8-volt range and above, but it seems to do just fine. The one that I have up there in that Ford has been running for over a couple of years now. So essentially the powertrains, if you don't max it out too much, you're going to be just fine. They've made a lot of these cars over the years, so you can get them in so many different configurations. You can see the difference in size between those two chassis, and they're actually the same exact thing. I can swap parts all day long between the two of them. And I can actually take all the carbon fiber bits off of this one and put it onto this little rally chassis and pretty vastly improve its performance based on what I've seen from this one. So other than eating gears because of the too high power setup in the motor, the carbon fiber chassis kit from MB Racing is definitely worth it. I will be buying more of them.